Morning. Maybe it's afternoon, who knows. Well, welcome back to another episode of Fox Can Fix It. We're still working on the Pontiac Ventura. And this was going to be the sort of tuning and timing episode. However, valve covers leak. So I thought, well, let's take those off. And then, if you give a pig a pancake, he buys new rocker arms. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to check compression. That's nothing to do with anything I just said. Or does it? Let's go find out. In 1973, that was sort of the beginning of the smog era for muscle cars. What that meant was you got what are called smog era heads, and you got a smaller camshaft. It just means that your once 250 to 300 horsepower engine is probably more like 175 now. But there is a way to get it back. In fact, there's multiple ways to get it back. But with a Pontiac 350, which this is, there's far fewer things to do than there are with your average Chevy small block. And everything you can do to the Pontiac is more expensive because of that. So, since this is a budget build, we're trying to get as much power as we can for as little money as possible. And little, I mean, not like, well, it was only $1,000 for a set of heads. No, my friend. That's real money. That's not what this is about. This is about real budget building. Used intake manifold, used carburetor. Now, the next step could be camshaft. Camshafts aren't that expensive, but with camshafts, then you're going lifters. Once you do that, to get the camshaft in, you're going water pump, you're going front timing cover. You're definitely going to do a timing set if you do that, and it does need a timing set, but not yet. It's borderline, so we'll live with it. And if you do all that, you're spending a lot more money than just a camshaft. Not to mention, if you've been looking at any automotive videos out there, you know that one massive problem right now in the industry is parts reliability. Everybody is complaining hydraulic lifters are collapsing or not working, or they're bleeding down, or there's metal in them. They're garbage. So do I really want to tear this apart and throw questionable parts in it, only have to tear it apart again? Not right now. I've got almost 50-year-old lifters that are working just fine. So where do you go from there then? How do you get more power? Well, there's a possibility, not a guarantee, that you can do it with rocker arms. Everybody's now shaking their heads or turning this off. The few of you that are sticking around, what you can do is you can get a higher ratio rocker arm. So Pontiac made a couple different ratios of rocker arm. They made a 1.5, which is standard in most of their stuff, but their performance cars, they made a 1.65. It's still stamped steel. It looks the exact same. The only difference is where the push rod actually mounts, or where the push rod ball attachment point is on this end of the rocker arm. And we'll get to that in a second. I'll show you on the bench. But what that does is that changes the amount of lift at the valve. You sort of want to get as many gases in there as quickly as possible. So duration does not change with rocker arm ratio, at least from what I've read. I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm reading forums and tech pages. I'm no expert. But if I haven't changed the duration, I change the lift, I'm opening the valve further for the same amount of time, I should be able to get more air in, and now I'm also pushing more air out. More air in, more air out should mean more boom, which should mean more power. But I had a question about it, and my question was, does that change the compression? And that's what I want to look at today. We should probably get to it. Coffee time. All right. Now, before we get with doing this compression test, here is the difference between the two rocker arms. This is the 1.65. See this difference here to the edge? That is all the difference that there is to make this a 1.65. You move your mounting point closer to the pivot point, that means this pushes down farther. Now, that pushing down farther, what you could run into is coil bind. You could run into potentially even maybe push rod binding on the push rod hole. But I've got a stock camshaft. I had changed nothing about that. And so far, I've got one side on, and none of the push rods are touching the push rod holes. They're close. They're within maybe 6 or 7 thousandths. But that's good enough for me. And I've got no coil bind. So we should be fine. I'm going to do just one cylinder on the driver's side to see if that cylinder, it changes. Mainly because I forgot to do a compression test on the passenger side before I swapped them all out. Okay, so like I just said a minute ago, this is going to be the original 1.5 to 1 rocker arms cranking compression test. I've got 130. Right about 125, 130, which it's cranking kind of slow, so that's not surprising, and it's a low compression engine, so I would say probably anywhere 125 to 150 would be good. Now all I gotta do is swap those rocker arms out, and we'll try this again. Now, one of the great things about these Pontiacs, other than there's only 4 valve cover bolts, which makes it really easy to get off because there's no emission stuff in the way, there's no computers. 4 bolts and your valve covers are off, is the fact that these are not adjustable rocker arms. So I don't have to worry about valve lash or anything like that when I put them on like you do on a lot of cars, like small block Chevy. No, these actually just go all the way down, and then you just torque them to 20 foot-pounds, or you torque them to right about like that, and you're done. So it's going to be really easy to swap these out, but you do want to use some assembly lube when you do it. We're going to swap 2 out right now, and you can see how easy it is. That's 1 off. Look how easy that was. And they're only tightened to 20 foot-pounds, so really they're sort of easy to take off. There we go. Break it loose. And it should come right off. Whoop, look at that. Rocker arms are off. A little bit of assembly lube on these, and by assembly lube I mean a light grease. So on initial startup, you're not galling anything. And what you do is you put your pivot ball back in there, and the pivot ball is simply this little washer that's half round and has some oil grooves on it. Throw that back down on there like that. Make sure you're on the push rod, then put the nut back on. The flat side goes down, the rounded side goes up. A little grease, go in here, right in there, you go here, and you go right where that mates. That should take care of it. Pivot ball, drop down in, rounded side goes down, right on your stud. Make sure you're on your push rod. Again, nut goes on, flat side down. There you go. There's snug, and it's about 20-ish. All the plugs are out. Carburetor held at wide open throttle. Ignition disconnected. And we are checking to see, once and for all, does a higher ratio rocker arm change your cranking or static compression versus a lower ratio rocker arm? You just watch the gauge. Okay, well, as you can see, as you cannot see yet, all right, as you can see, that's 130 psi or thereabouts. So changing rocker arm ratios absolutely does not change cranking compression. Okay, so why didn't that make a difference on cranking compression? Well, look at it like this. At low RPM, the intake runners, the carburetor, the cylinder head, they're nowhere near their flow limits. It doesn't really matter to them how far they're open. At 150 RPMs, that piston going down will pull in just as much air as it needs, whether you're at a half-inch opening or 3/4 of an inch opening with that valve. It really doesn't matter. Think of it like this. Spare tire. Your tire's got 40 pounds of air in it. Take like a small screwdriver, touch the end of the Schrader valve, a little bit of air leaks out. Push the Schrader valve in farther, a lot of air leaks out. It's higher pressure. If that tire's down to 234 psi, go ahead and do the same thing again. Push in a little bit on the Schrader valve, air will eke out. Push in a lot on the Schrader valve, same amount of air will eke out, or very similar amount. It doesn't matter. there's not enough pressure to make a difference. And that's what this proves. This proves that at cranking RPM, how far that valve opens makes no difference. Not until you start reaching the actual flow limits of the head and the runners does it make a difference on how far open that valve is. So, compression test proves nothing. The only thing I do know is if you've got a higher ratio rocker arm, as long as you're not binding, it acts like a larger camshaft. And that's my goal. My goal is as cheaply as possible to make this engine perform better than stock. And it's an experiment. I don't know that I'm going to get it right. That's what experiments are. Experiments are tests. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. If you knew what the outcome's going to be, it's not an experiment. It's a waste of time. So we're just going to keep moving forward. I know that the higher ratio will act like a slightly larger camshaft, which is what I want. I know I've got more flow through the carburetor and intake now that I've swapped them out for 4 barrels. After that, I probably will do a timing chain sometime in the near future. And I'm looking at an adjustable timing chain. Reading online, I've been looking that the very lazy camshafts that these had, you can actually advance the cam a couple degrees with an adjustable timing chain. Is that a good idea? I don't know. If you've done it before or if you have an opinion on this, let me know in the comments. If you know this does work, especially on a weaker, smaller camshaft like these have, let me know. I need to know if I'm going to waste my money or not, because it's probably double the cost to get an adjustable timing chain set as it is from a stock one. So that's the road we're going to continue to go down, is budget performance. I'll put the rest of the rocker arms on, we'll button the valve covers up, and, well, I guess we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.